All right, Guitar Friends, episode 21. We're here with Christoph and Thomas from Kemper. This is, I mean, you really sort of, this is the NAMM where you show off the player. It's been out for a little, I mean, it feels like, when did it come out, the player?
Yeah, I mean, it's like 2 weeks ago, or like 3 weeks ago. Like, yeah, that's a while.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
It's
well,
quite
I
a
feel
while.
like I feel like I've had it and have played it, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like I've had it for a little while,
Yeah.
and so
Is that good or bad?
good. But
Yeah,
I get.
okay.
Well, I'm just saying. I guess this is the launch of the player.
Yeah.
But
In a way.
sold out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very popular.
yeah, since day one and still, right?
Yeah, more popular than the stage.
Yes,
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Because it's like half price,
That's a good point.
roughly. So it's
That is a good point.
sure.
That's a good
And,
point.
yeah. And being sold out, it's always a matter of how many you make.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, we sold out.
I made 5 of them,
Yeah,
and they're all
yeah.
gone. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, in a way, it's like Tom once came and said, well, some companies said that the demand was like 10 times higher than we thought. Well, it matters what you think, right?
It does. It definitely.
But I would say, well, our expectations are now fulfilled 20-fold,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yes. There's a lot.
Same joke, same joke.
Yes.
Don't take that serious.
A lot of people waiting, though. A lot of people are waiting. Sweetwater, I see a lot of people
Yeah.
online saying, when is Sweetwater going to have mine? I'm still waiting for it. I used to say, oh, just go buy it from Kemper, and then, you know, the Kemper store is sold out now, too. But exciting stuff.
Is it?
Yeah.
It is, right.
Is it? Right?
absolutely.
I mean, you're making
Exciting stuff.
more come. You know what I mean? They go, right?
Yeah, of
They're
course,
making
of
all the
course.
time. Yeah.
But this is really another step towards making baking the tools and the sounds and the tones
Yeah.
for guitar players
Yeah.
into a package that makes it even, of course, affordable, but more mobile.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to travel easier, and also less stuff you have to deal with compared to the old days.
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about that. What it basically means, if you look at the whole getting rid of amps, tubes, and cabinets
Yeah.
for creation, playing at home,
Yeah.
writing, practicing, and going to the rehearsal rooms, and
Yeah.
also even to playing live and putting a production together.
Yeah.
And so I thought that might be interesting to discuss with you guys, because you're doing it for a while, for
Yeah.
a long while,
Yeah.
playing guitar, recording, writing, performing. And back in the old days, I mean, back like 10 years ago, it was still a different situation you were dealing with. So
How long is
how has it
yeah.
worked for you, and how was the change? How easy was it, and how obvious was it?
when did the Kemper first come out? 13 years ago?
We showed it for the first time in January 2011 at the NAMM show.
Okay.
And it shipped, the exact date was December 27th the same year. So
Yeah.
actually January 2012 it went worldwide to the market. So it's
Yeah.
12 years now
Wow.
on the market.
Wow.
Right.
Well, I mean, we all see it probably. I mean, you guys probably see it too. The market's changed a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Expectations changed a lot. When I noticed today, guitar players seem more open. This is a stupid statement. Why would I even say? Obviously, guitar players are more open than ever to digital solutions, right? Yeah, obviously. But what I noticed today is the bias seems almost gone, or maybe the bias is only in the minority of the market now. I think most people accept that just digital non-tube things can sound very good. Whereas earlier, maybe this was your experience, I felt like when I first got into Kemper, it was still very much like, oh no, I'm just a tube guy, I don't listen to any of that. Oh, is it, no tubes, I'm not in it. No tubes, And now I think that is a minority opinion. You don't see that as much. I think most people accept you can get great tone from a lot of things, even to the point I think players are less
less likely to want to have a tube amp. Look, I think that
I think they settle for not as good tone often for the sake of convenience. Do you know what I mean? Because
That
I see
could-
a lot of cheaper stuff that does not, to me, really pass the test.
I think there's
And
a lot of
people just go with
places.
it.
There's a lot of places too where it's so much. Even if so, what you're saying, even if you're compromise what you believe perceived compromise on tone, for the sake of not having to roll in a head with a 4x12 cabinet,
Mm-hmm.
is so good.
Yeah.
It's so much better, and then having to I mean, and that's why the Kemper stage was really kind of life changing to a lot of people too, because it was like now it's not even a head; it's just like everything I need.
Right there. Yeah.
I can carry one bag,
One piece
and it
dedicated.
has my guitar and my amp and
Yeah.
all my effects and everything, and it's
Yeah.
exactly what I need. That I feel like that the convenience of that, and then of course it sounds excellent, right?
Yeah.
And the effects sound excellent. And I think that's one of the things that, and I told you this yesterday. One of the things I think that where the Kemper stands above everything. You guys have been making the same hardware for 13 years, yet it does every like the effects sound. We were saying today,
Like new effects. There's
like
new
there's
the
new
capability
you keep
coming in.
out with new effects. The reverbs and the delays are like I've never wanted another one.
Yeah. And
Right? It is.
yeah.
It's exactly what they need to be, and so
Yeah, we
There's-
can put in a clip too of the reverse trem or something because like there's these new effects that are on the unit, and they sound almost like we'll play a clip here, but they sound almost nothing like other things that I've heard from effects stuff. You know what I mean?
But still, because before we came here,
Mm-hmm.
I was having a conversation with a gentleman from France,
Yeah.
A professional jazz and studio guitar
Yeah.
player, and he came and said, "Okay, how can you convince me to go with this unit compared to my amp and my cabinets?"
Right.
He runs a
They're
wet-
still around.
wet
Yeah, they're
dry-
still there. They're still
wet,
there.
wet, dry, wet system and stuff like that. And so I said, okay, do you want to have the easy answer or should we go into this? And he definitely wanted to go into this. And I said, well, most probably you wouldn't like it. And you guys out there most probably wouldn't like that as well if you're more into valve, tube, stuff like that. Because I usually start this conversation then with, well, what do you actually hear? How are you trained? What's the guitar tone you have in your head you want to get? That's the guitar tone you hear from recordings, from live shows.
Yeah.
And that's always mic'd up guitar tones. That's a microphone in front of a cabinet. And who is the one who hears the original, the most authentic guitar tone? The guitar player? Not always, because if the guitar player moves, sound changes
Yeah, sure.
for a guitar cabinet. And someone then decides to put a microphone at some certain position, and that's most probably even not the position which the guitar player maybe likes the most.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
a lot of guitar players, when they come to studios for the first time and have the engineer bring up the mic'd up guitar sound, you see long faces because they're not used to that. You're used
Yeah,
as a
true.
guitar player to the amp
Very
in the
true.
room sound. It's an old story. And then what is that what you're expecting? And you have to transform this experience as a player into the thing that the world knows, the artist knows.
Yeah.
And even when people sound like, yeah, I heard Jimi Hendrix here and there, and that's the tone I was going for. I said, you have never heard the tone Jimi Hendrix went with.
It's true.
Because he was standing in front of his speakers,
Yeah.
and he went there where he had the best sensation and inspiration. But there was a microphone stuck,
Yeah.
fixed in front of that speaker, and that's what you know. So the conversation basically should be a little bit more specific then. And I think that's the biggest hurdle for players to take, that you realize that when you're talking about, profilers, modelers, whatever, what we are all going for is that the guitar player, for example, and that's a big advantage today. The guitar player has the chance to hear every nuance and have control over every nuance of his playing, and he's sure that the audience will hear exactly that. So for the first time,
Yes.
The communication line between audience and the player is like not
And-
cramped with weird stuff. And in the old days, you never knew what's coming out of the PA or so.
Yeah.
And you have always to abstract in your playing what would happen on the recording and on the CD. And now there's a direct thing because it's the audience and you is direct connection, like
Right.
you're whispering into somebody's ear.
Right. You can hear. Yeah.
And I have a theory that's on top of that even, like with digital guitar amps, if you try it the first time, you will go through different presets, and all these different presets usually have different cabinets with different mics and mic positions, and this is like it's a scenario that you can't make with a tube amp, like switching through dozens of cabinets in a minute, and this is like trying different sunglasses with different colors, I'd say. So or like you have a yellow glass, but you yourself get colored and get used to the yellow, but then you take the pink glass, and then you will see everything in blue, and this might be quite disturbing, and this is the same for the ear, and I think this is something that, well, people are not used to that, right, at first place, because it's like it's quite at first place an artificial thing to skip to and to jump through like dozens of like amp presets that do like
I think that's one of the most.
People go like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Could go like, well, that sounds digital to me, even though it's not, right? And
That's one of the
this
most.
is-
That's one of the most crazy differences between when you first get a Kemper and you've had every other tube amp. Is even if you mess with all the dials on your tube amp, it really sounds like more or less of the same thing. But when you go through all of the different rigs in the Kemper, you're like, oh, these are all wildly different.
Yes.
Maybe that's the next effect you should make. A tremolo that every beat of the tremolo switches to a different profile.
Oh my god!
Boom, ba, 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 I know. Randomly. That's like,
Random.
Oh my god!
really good.
Right.
Yeah, that's tough.
It'll be called the
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable trem.
Yeah, and then connected to an Atmos system where each amp will come from a different speaker all the time.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
But the thing is here that
It's a good idea, actually.
because you all know that if you play, I don't know, something like a Les Paul or so, neck pickup, and you play and check out an amp profile or a model in any of the digital devices, and you switch to another one, it's a Vox, whatever, and the people had maybe the Edge or Strats and Tellys in mind, and you switch to that tone with that guitar.
Yes.
It most likely will not sound very well because these things are depending on so many other things. So to approach the digital stuff with the knowledge that, okay, I'm working with my M tone and then make maybe, I don't know, 10 copies for presets of the same amp and then start to dial in versions of that and be then more consistent with your basic tone and add then also a set of tools that represent you much more instead of going through various M tones, which usually put the sound guys to hell as well.
True.
Because when they get so much different stuff live, they can't. They can put this into the band sound as well. But I would like to know, because we're talking about this development and how the job and the tools changed. When you go back like to 2010, 11, how did your rigs like then? Did you have some digital stuff, or when you were playing and recording and writing, did you use amps, small amps, big amps?
What'd you have, Susan?
Yeah,
What'd
I
your
wanted
rig
to
look like?
weigh in on that. So, like, for me, I started playing on stages and started doing more performing and playing in church and bands and stuff around 2005. You know, and so even at that point, it was still loud amp on stage with a mic in front of it. Keep it at moderate volumes, but like play the thing, you know, and like the drummer is like kind of getting over you and you're turning up, and like it was that kind of war kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I think if I would have jumped straight from there to a Kemper, it would have been very jarring. But I didn't. Like right around 2007, 2008, we changed our whole rig at church, and even with some of the bands I played with, everybody got these inner systems. And so now my matchless, 212 cabinet's way in the back. There's a big thing over it, and now I'm like you were talking about, I'm just hearing the mic'd up sound, which I had never heard before. Because it was going through the mains, and I'm on stage, like with my amp behind me. So who knows? I loved what you said. Like now I'm hearing what they're hearing, which is that microphone. And so now when I turn my distortion pedal or my delay or reverb, I'm hearing what they're hearing.
And it might have sounded a bit digital, right?
Yes, very. Compared to the
There's a lot
full
of
range
just-
sound, yeah. And
Yeah,
so
the board was digital.
Yeah.
The EQs are digital. Right. It's all
right.
very digital.
And it was interesting. You hear people say phrases like "silent stage." We want a silent stage. Well, there's an amp blaring somewhere. It's in an ISO cap, like way back there. And so once I went to that, even before I was aware of the Kemper modelers, I thought, well, now it doesn't really matter what I'm using because I'm just hearing this little version inside my ear.
Yes.
And so if that's coming from valves or that's coming from a pedal, it doesn't matter as long as it sounds good. It is good in my ears and for the people, And that was one of the things I loved the most was like I could actually hear what I'm delivering to people now, And any change I made was a good change because I could hear the whole mix, not just my amp in isolation, even though I was on stage,
Yeah, and that's a really important point because when we're talking about music and communication and making entertainment and communication to people, to the audience, when you are absolutely sure that every nuance of your voice, if you're saying something to somebody, is reaching that person and not just a random version of it, adds so much more quality to the art and the performance, if that's not too artistic and philosophical.
No, it's yeah.
Because there's this other side of as well of the whole game, because we all, as guitar players and gear nerds, like to play around with the gear. But that's a different spiel, I guess, because if we're talking about the performance, the musicianship, that's really a huge improvement.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think, like, I have a lot of amps, and gear is to a degree for the player. Like my preferences on the guitar, which one I play, is not always for really it's not really, it doesn't always matter, but I might have strong preferences about things. I had a similar thing. Around that time, I was making the switch, too, from a wedge and a loud stage to a silent stage and going in-ears. And that creates a whole bunch of things. You have to learn how to now mix yourself. What do you want to hear? You have so much more control over it. And my experience, I've told the story a million times, but the first time I played with someone who had a Kemper, I did not. I had an amp and everything. I dragged in all this stuff. And he sounded way better because he had profiles that were multiple mics, pre's, dialed in the way he wanted it, and I just ran to the back, put the 57 on the amp. So I think even my question to people would be, like, what sounds better, like an emulation, a profile of the amp that I wanted, captured the way I want it to be heard, this mic and this mic, or me running back there and really just setting it and then running back out and listening and then running back and doing. This is very difficult, and the mic movement matters a lot. And sometimes things will get bumped. Like even now when I profile amps, because if I use a 412, it shakes. And I built a room and it's a raised platform. And sometimes if the mic stand is too loose, I'll start listening, it'll get dark, and I'll go back in the room and the microphone has it has moved. And I think, I hear it, and I go back and then I think, like, well, it's been moving, like it's been shaking and moving, and it changes it, It definitely changes it. To me, the question is really, if you have more control by controlling the microphone, the speaker, through all of that, even adding EQ after your signal, on your device, if you have more control to do that, why would you stop control of your signal chain at the speaker and leave it up to someone else, mic, everything going in. You know what I mean? Like, it would seem you go through all this effort to get your tone this far. You want to get it all the way to the listener. I think the difference in the market now is that I feel like more consumers accept that that's important. When Kemper maybe first came out, even when I started using Kemper, it was almost thought like, whatever, you just bring your amp to the gig. You know, and there wasn't much thought given to those other things. But now people give thought to it, and I think people realize they can take their studio tones with them. And now it feels more like people want to do that. And I'll tell you, hanging around the booth and talking to people, this NAMM with you guys, I had more conversations about the ability to send the signal front of house and have a separate monitor out to speakers here and be able to adjust that for the player on stage, which is also very desirable. And also, 13 years later, still no one else is doing that. Have you noticed this?
Is doing what?
None of the other digital units let you send your finished signal front of house, but send a direct signal to guitar speakers with a built-in power amp, or send it to somebody else and give you separate EQ control options to change those things. You could maybe in some units do it if you did the routing yourself, but it's not built into anything. And
So maybe
still,
to explain that further, you
Yeah.
mean one output with the cabinet, and the second output that doesn't deliver the cabinet because you're
Yes.
going into real
Yeah.
cabinet.
Yeah.
Just to make that clear. Yeah.
And EQs on the cabinet, but not go in front of house, so that the player can deliver what is right, but they can still adjust what they want, which is different than the audience. And it is interesting that's not done.
Yeah, that's true. And on the other hand, we hear stories about there's this one guy in Germany who's he has his own profile packs, and he's a guitar player doing a lot of artist support. But he now also became the guy to set up their Kemper stuff for other tours and things like this. And he's the guy for programming the shows. And he's doing stuff with MIDI that he, when the vocals come in, he's putting a dip into the EQ, the output EQ of the profiler to make room for the EQ so that the sound guy doesn't have to bother with this stuff and stuff like this. So that's all possible. I mean, that's extreme, of course, but now that's possible, and it adds to the quality, how the performances and the whole performance, reaches the audience and stuff like this. But I would like to maybe also go, because we were back 24, 25, 27 when you went in ear and the first realizations. What was the next step? Because I also know what Christoph's thinking was, the process which led to starting to think about the profiler as well, because you were a keyboard player, but you always told me that you were watching what the guitar players were doing on stage, and you were from day one a huge fan of guitar sound, but you were always wondering, and what were you wondering about that led you to there must be something
I actually
done?
was wondering about why the digitalization of guitar amps didn't really happen. It happened in some areas, but it definitely didn't happen that time.
Slower than
in
everything else.
Yes, like in the with the pro users, right? That could be seen. And I wonder why that is, because that was not normal to me. We had the Access Virus synthesizer at that time. We had big artists. I lately found a video which I didn't know about from 2010. It's with Prince, and it's a nice live gig, and there's a virus on the keyboard stand and stuff. So it's really great.
Right.
And this was not happening with digital guitar amps, even though they were there. They were there since the middle of the 90s, right? This is when it started, and still 2010 it wasn't really there, and everything else was digital, right?
Yes.
Television, sound, keyboards, cameras, everything,
CDs.
everything but guitar amps.
Guitar amps are the last
In a way.
vacuum tube.
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I was just going to say, I think
Yeah.
guitar amps are the only thing
That
keeping
use vacuum tubes.
most vacuum tubes
Going.
production.
Yeah.
Not even
going.
the military anymore.
Yeah,
right?
correct, yeah.
They, even they kicked it out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
I think
Just
it
us.
could have it could have been too. I feel like a lot of the first digital solutions, they were only trying to solve the preamp. So they were only trying to solve the preamp of the amp of a guitar amplifier, right?
The very first ones, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
they were. That was the only goal. It was, there was, first we had like tube preamp and like digital power amps, right? But then when and really Line 6 was kind of the first like mainstream digital solution, which I toured with. I toured with a Line 6, and it sounded fine, but it was really just solving the preamp. You still had a power section, and you still had speakers and the cabinet and all of that.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
didn't. It didn't do
the
rest.
cabinet was the big thing. That just happened really, really late.
Yeah.
Because afterwards you had digital delays, digital reverbs, whatever. The lexicon, the famous lexicon for 480L, this was like 70s or 80s. And that's still the most sought after reverb sound. So and that was digital. And yeah, for the guitar stuff, digital front, then tube amp, cabinet, microphone.
Right.
Yeah.
And this cabinet microphone situation was for a long time not covered. And it was actually Line 6 with, I think first they had this amp. This was 96 NAMM show, I remember. And in 97 they came with a pod, the first bean. And that pod had for the first time the whole enchilada,
Yeah.
So you get the ready seasoned signal, which was as it was at that time, but that was the first one. And then not too many things happened because it was not really, except you haven't seen it on too many stages. You said you toured with Line 6 stuff.
Yeah.
I have seen one. They had this amp which was called Veta.
Yeah, the Veta. Yeah.
And this one had a lot of processing power, and you could really crank it and make it pump a little bit. I saw some artists with that, but that was like the mid 2000s or so.
Yeah, so I was in like the early 2000s,
Oh.
and that's the thing. It was, and that's what I mean. Like they were just solving the preamp section because it was still going through a digital power amp, and then mic'd up
mic'd
on
it,
it,
yeah.
and then still a microphone on the cabinet.
I had a big
Right?
flex tone amp, Line 6, that I would mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried
Because
that
that
for a
was the only, and so I feel like the jump, and I feel like all guitar players were so interested on having, or so used to having the stage volume. It wasn't until we started to want the stages to be quiet.
It's really production led that, not guitar players.
Exactly.
I realized I started showing up places and it was, you must be silent. It wasn't an option. There were no mics on stage. It was an XLR laying, right? It's the difference. It's like,
Right.
there's no
But
microphone.
when was that? Much later, right?
Yeah, late, like, what year you think?
Late 2000s, 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really where it started changing in churches
Okay.
anyway. But churches were early. They wanted silence.
Right.
They would put things around the drums because old people come in. Too loud. It's too loud. Turn it down. Right. So like it's like that was the first places that I would see. But true, there were years when I was playing on a Sunday morning silent, but I would play then in a band in clubs on Fridays, full blast on stage, right? So it was two different worlds. Now, a lot of the pros I know in Nashville, it's all silent, even the big acts, mostly because they want dancing, and your guitar rig can't be stationary because whoever it is, whatever the singer, the stage has to move and clear. So your things have to all be wireless, and it's all synced to the system. They got to be able to move your stuff. You're not important enough, to the show, to be stuck there. What do you guys see as the biggest changes in the market? I mean, you probably ran up against the most strong-held opinions when it first came out. People were probably going, "What is this? We're never going to play this. It has no tubes."
Yeah, and the thing was
They said it before. I mean,
Yeah.
it was not just about us, right? They always said that.
Everybody, yeah.
Yes, of course.
But yours was the first that said,
Yeah.
"We can sound like that."
And
You
it
know?
was,
Like-
and it was even because I, as a guitar player, I hated cabinets and heavy amps pretty early, and so I'm not representative for a bigger group of guitar players here.
Sure.
But I think it was in 2010, 11, the whole guitarist community was already on the other side of the hill, I said, at that point in time, because there have been promises of digital and making life simpler and going direct for, at that point, 15 years, 16 years, and everything was like kind of,
Yeah.
it didn't really work. It wasn't that real thing, this authentic tone. And so everybody has left that idea
Yes.
and that dream already to be able to make it simpler. So we had to climb on top of that hill and shout to the other side of the, hey, but there's something else.
Yes.
That's when
Right.
Christoph came with a profiler. And then it started, we had to just prove that is the crucial thing, the amp, cap, mic
Yeah.
situation was really covered very
Right.
well. And that was the smart move with the profiling. And that was the thing. So how come did that thinking come together from on top of the fact that you thought, why is nothing happening for digital for guitar players? I mean, then you went to look into this.
Yeah, I mean, before there were modelers, and there was mostly nothing bad about them. But the story that the modelers told is I'm a guitar amp, and what you feel was, well, it doesn't sound like mine. But it was probably capable of doing so, but at first it didn't sound like mine, because, of course, also you were comparing it to your amp with an amp in the room situation and had that playing through your studio speakers. It had to sound different anyway. So that comes back to the story that we talked about. Well, the profiling, well, it was also a psychological thing. Well, to say there's that real A/B comparison. And then, in a way, and I'm just thinking about that. Yeah, this forced you to listen to your amp through that same speakers as well for that A/B comparison. And
It's like a big filter on all the tone. Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not the filter. It's just the situation that you compare it to the real situation, as you said, right? Yeah. That's what you have on your in-ears, and being forced to do and to try that instead of just comparing it like to the amp in the room sound, right? And that of course helped to show that digital works, right?
Yeah, and it psychologically didn't take away the unit, the gear, the amp away from the guitar player. It actually brought this digital device together with your personally amp you had so many emotional relationships with, because all the other things, the modeling takes you away from your amp and your tone, because somebody else in an office, in an engineering room, decided, oh, that's how a Marshall sounds.
Yes.
So, and now for the first time, you brought this digital world much closer to your loved personal item. That was psychologically a very, very important thing.
Yeah, I think maybe you said something that I've never thought about. When the models first came out, it was, this is the model of this amp. This is the model of this amp, right? And you would listen to it and you're like, that's not what my Mesa Boogie sounds like. That's not what my Marshall sounds like.
Yeah.
That's what someone else thought it sounded like. And that's why I think the capture tech has always been above the modeling tech for me, is because you can capture exactly your sound. Right. And it's, I mean, when we first started making profiles together, we were all shocked at, like, when it goes through the speaker, the studio monitors, and the cabinet is in an isolation booth somewhere else. Yeah. And it's like, you really can't tell. You can't tell at all. Yeah. You know? And that was like, and then the other thing too, I think that adds to it is, like you were talking about when you first started doing in-ears, there was like a bit of a learning curve. If you're used to playing on a stage when the sound of the guitar amp is hitting your pickups and there's like the feedback cycle and everything, it's a lot more forgiving than if you're in another room than your amplifier. And I first experienced that in the studio because the cabinet was in the tracking, or in the sound room, and I was in the tracking room, and it was like, oh, this feels different. It's a learning curve.
I have a question for you. How much? Well, I get questions sometimes, maybe about the Kemper. People say, well, does it feedback? And I would think to myself, well, the fact that you're asking this question means you don't understand that to get feedback, I need sound from a speaker to vibrate my string. So the fact that you're asking, does something, do this? Of course, like with no sound, I can't get this to work.
True.
So there's a lot of like guitar player ignorance. What percentage or how much did you run into this? Like when you're trying to make the Kemper in the beginning, solve this problem, what was your take on the beliefs that were out there, the generally held opinions of guitar players compared to what is actually true? Because one thing I noticed from talking to you over the years, you have you're an engineer. You see the problem, you look for the solution. You're not hung up on like folklore, like EL84 and the Dumble, right? Yeah. You just go, well, we could do that. We can reproduce it. Here's,
Yeah, and at least we can try. I mean, that was my approach.
Yes.
I try. I couldn't tell if that is if it will work, if it will happen. And yeah, I of course I talked to too many people, but I didn't really. Let's say it was not about the myth that I was talking to them, because I knew a lot about that already, and it was more. I was talking to people like how they perceive the existing digital amplifiers and what they think about. Tell me a story about it. And this is pretty much what I did. And I thought it was interesting to see what this is like a modeler story, and now we are also a bit of a modeler with liquid profile. So we have we also have a list of types of amps. But I thought was so funny to have that brand of digital amp and then talking about the models inside that. So it was like a brand graveyard that we're talking about. Like in this modeler, the Vox in that modeler is I like that one more than this same Vox in the other modeler and stuff. And but I like the Marshall there on the other better. And
we still do that.
Well, after 3 minutes, you were confused. Like for all these brands, I thought that was funny.
Right.
It's like, okay, that's difficult in a way, but that was actually maybe the point, right? With like, I like that Vox more here. There's to me it's a little bit too bright or whatever, and I thought, okay, it's all these tiny bits, and some others will like it that bright, probably. So this was actually the thing, like how can we solve that problem? Like for you it's too bright, for you it's not, but the difference is not that much. But a treble control doesn't help because it would change something else, and so on and so on. So I thought like, well, we need a cloning machine here that would be good, and a cloning machine that works at home. Yeah, this is it, and not in my laboratory. So I'm out.
Why did you think that?
I have weekend, and the others do the profiles. Right. This was. It's a business model also.
It is a business model. It's
I don't have to do it all the time.
Yeah.
But everyone can do it, and I don't do it.
Yeah.
And actually, what we did also, we never really delivered profiles to the people, because I said at the beginning, because we learned this. At first place, it's good to have many different people making content, because then it's with like it carries every culture, and we can't do this in the company, and we don't want to do this. So there's like, well, maybe we've done in a way for the company 12 profiles. I'm sorry, I think 1 or 2 that I did, it was just test profiles. They are still in there because they came out great.
Like Crunch.
No, and the crunch is a special thing. Did I tell the story? It's like
tell it again. I've heard of it. I don't know if
I've
you've
heard it. I want to hear it.
It's also a funny story to make in the beginning, to make a running prototype, something that you can play guitar through. And this was before profiling, actually. Yeah. I had to have an impulse response to play through. To have a cabinet, because you wouldn't want to play without a cabinet. And so I went to my university. If they can make me, I don't know what the source was. I don't know, make me a cabinet, because I think back in the days you couldn't get there was no IR loader. Yeah. I think, right. I needed just one cabinet. So it's that one cabinet, and this Well, and it is when I start my system, right? When I start my system, it comes like with initial stuff, initial values, so I can work on it, and it doesn't even know what rig that is. I could then switch rigs, and then it knows the rig. But when it should work when it just comes up clean, right? There is supposed to be a rig,
Yeah.
right? So, and there's that cabinet, and we had that situation when you back in the days now when the user starts the profile, the outputs are muted till the rig is loaded, right? And of course the outputs are muted so it doesn't get the bump for switching on the unit.
Yeah.
So we didn't have that mute on SPDIF, right? There was not that mute because it was on the analog circuit. And then for 2 seconds you could play that profile.
The default.
This really default profile. And they said like, well, what is that? And it sounds so good, and I can only play it for 2 seconds. It's like, and I thought, this is funny. And I had to find out, like, why? How do they know it even? So we found out it's with SPDIF. They can hear it for 2 seconds. Okay. And I also think it sounds very good. I always liked it. So I took these data and distilled this, well, let's say profile out of these. This is maybe the only profile which is not a real profile.
Not a real profile.
I had to like put it together artificially to make that happen, and that's the CK crunch,
Yeah.
right? And
It's like is it like the natural sound of the?
no.
Well, no, I
would
but
say because there's not necessarily natural
Yeah.
sound, but as you can see, there's like
it's come from nothing, like come from
probably
itself.
I don't know what the
That's
gain
the
is,
ghost in the
but it's
machine.
all
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's it.
Yeah.
I think it's all on pretty much on default middle position. Probably the gain is exactly in the middle.
Probably,
Maybe we
yeah.
changed that, but I can tell that the definition, for example, is exactly in the middle.
Yeah.
And I don't know, some other stuff is also in the middle. Because of that, to sound the same. I hear that sound every day, actually.
Yeah.
When I start working, it always comes up. And
Right, every time
which
you're in
is fine.
performance mode,
Which
it's
is
there.
also fine for me. It's that sound. I can always hear, like, if I did something wrong, when I change code, then I can easily hear it because I'm so used to that sound. But not everyone has it.
Yes.
So, it's funny, yeah.
That's really funny. How about now when you talk to guitar players and maybe you design the clarity control or the values for the generic Kemper EQ? How much are those values maybe? How much are you running into guitarist perception? How they're perceiving things differently than maybe how they understand them. I want more presence, but maybe what they're actually asking you for is not a shelf at a high frequency point. They're after a sort of sensation that is more involved.
Yeah, but they don't say it. They
Right,
don't say
right,
that.
right.
Because, like, if you have that sensation, well, you could make yourself a new profile or check another profile or use an equalizer. So actually, we're not asked that question.
Yeah.
Like, if this is the questions that I would have been awaiting if we made a modeler. Like, with being the Vox, maybe can it be it's a bit dull, blah, and stuff. But that was the trick. We do not get these questions.
But there's also a thing, that leads back to that part of your question. What were the obstacles?
Yeah.
If we call it obstacles when we started. That's exactly addressing this because I was so amazed. There was a major guitar magazine, wouldn't name it, it doesn't matter. And the one of the leading editors and reviewers for that magazine, experienced guitar players. And they got the profiler. And a week later he called me and he said he was just so amazed how the sound changes when you move the in terms of where you put the microphone in front of the amp, because it turns out that he never himself mic'd up his amp, and it was a grown-up man with a lot of knowledge about amps, tubes.
And he was chief editor now.
Pickups,
Chief
pickups and stuff like that, and he was totally amazed because he never did it himself.
Yes,
so
yes.
he recorded in studios and he played live and he was mic'd up.
Someone else
So
did it, yeah.
that's for me. Then explained. I was totally blown away by this. But I have a different background. I'm a guitar player, but I worked for a lot of software companies. I was in the recording world and software world where these things, studio,
Yeah.
you know how to mic a guitar,
Yeah.
and basically as well. And if you are a guitar player, you take care of this yourself. If you do home recording and stuff like that, but a lot of guitar players don't do that, and that's actually the point I wanted to make when we talked about when you just mentioned that these aspects
Yes.
of which are the parameters that actually have an impact on your tone and where it sits and stuff like that is something I don't know, and that's what I would like to hear that from you guys as well.
Yeah.
So how has this level of knowledge about what actually the guitar sound is and how to make it like you like it or something else, how has the knowledge grown? How much has it increased? Because it's special for guitar players. It's like the people who are typing into a computer or making computer-aided design or graphics design, like
Yes.
they would know about the insides of the computer as
Right,
well,
right.
which is very rare. But the guitar players are the ones who are getting inside
Yeah.
their tool.
Often they are, yeah.
And how much do they know these days about the other parts of their guitar playing? As I said, before amp playing, and then you took these other tasks to someone else. But now many are doing it themselves, and has this changed big time? So the players have matured into also recording production and considering how it works on stage and stuff like that. You think so? That's more.
I think that it's given us an opportunity as guitar players to sort of step back. How often do you, as a guitar player, go and stand and listen to the front of the house mix? Never, because you can't, right? And so you never hear it. You never even think about it. You're more concerned with what you're playing. You're more concerned with the monitor situation or whatever. And it's that maybe you've just been afraid to or never needed to or whatever to actually care about what the front of the house sounds like. And I feel like, people go sit down to make a profile, and it's like, oh, I never really thought about this. And, I used to, I took a lot of time and effort when I was touring to actually listen, put an earplug in and actually put your ear next to the speaker and figure out, where do I like it? Right? It sounds different if you move it. And I had like a little square on my cabinet, right? Put the mic straight on right here. That's where I want it, But I don't think everyone does that, and I think it's
Still
a lot of people,
Still?
I think, now are learning more in digital environments doing that. For a lot of people, it's probably easier to get some sort of aux box software and move a mic around than it is to get the mic and the thing. Mostly because maybe they don't have a place to be loud. I think the knowledge of there's also similar to that. How many people own an 1176? Not a lot of people. How easy is it to get an emulation of one of those in your DAW? Very easy, usually built in, Right. So people's experience and knowledge, I think, of pro audio equipment and microphones is probably going up, because I notice how many YouTubers you make YouTube videos from a stage or are in a practice room. We're all at desks designed for audio engineers, right? With studio, right? Everyone, that's like where you play the guitar now.
Yeah.
Rather than next to an amp or something. But their knowledge often of the gear that is referenced in modelers is probably at an all-time low. Nobody has played these old amps. They've just heard emulations of them. I even speak with some of our peers who maybe do a similar thing, and they'll tell me, wow, I just bought a JTM 45, and it's like this or like this, or whoa, this is so loud, or I just got that. It's their first real experience with that amp. They've had maybe another Marshall or another this or another that, but they think they know what it sounds like, but then they hear the real thing and it's different. Like a Dumble. I've played one real one, and but I think I know what they sound like. I think I have a very good idea what the different models sound like, but I only played one actual real one. So it's all reference. It's all clones and copies. So on that, it's, almost no real world knowledge. And I find that, I think today from guitar players, we're learning what an analog delay sounds like through emulation of an analog. And then we still go and go, it doesn't sound authentic, or it sounds digital. I never
Yeah.
heard not digital.
Actually-
right? Never heard not digital.
Actually, yes, as well, and also this, now these null tests and all the measuring stuff that's happening out there. I feel a little bit. I mean, back in the days, you had the money for one amp, one cabinet, one speaker thing, and then you got into pedals quickly because you wanted to make this sodding thing sound more like you. So the first task was to do something that this amp doesn't sound so authentic, because basically you hated that, or it was not flexible enough. And now everybody wants to have that again, where you have to tinker with big time to make it into something that fits with the system and stuff like that. I found this hilarious, and that's the point where I'm really curious about. I mean, you guys are the media, so you talk to the people.
That's what,
and
my badge
yeah,
says.
and there are the magazines. There were the mainstream media of MI magazines and stuff like that. They are still out there. There are all the YouTubers and the channels and influencers and stuff like that. So how do you think is there the vibe and the majority of the people? Because I hear a lot of discussions out there, sometimes really heated. And who's firing these things up, or who's calming them down? How is the education out there? And is this something you're dealing with as well, or having fun with? Maybe I put a spark into that can of oil.
Yes.
And
it can be fun
so
to troll people. It can be fun to say things that are sort of incendiary in nature. Yes, it sparks. It's the best part of the job, maybe. Watch people take this stuff very seriously. Very seriously, and the need for confirmation bias is, I think, a large part of internet views, culture, clicks. Maybe more people read about a modeler after they buy it. Just to be reinforced. I made a good decision. I made a good decision. I made a good decision.
Sure.
It's definitely. But everyone's like a critic now, right? Everyone's a restaurant critic because of Yelp, and everyone's media because of YouTube, and everyone is a recording artist because of free Logic.
Right.
Right?
I was going to say, I feel like there's so, like, the proliferation of people recording music at home, making music at home, has turned everyone into engineers.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And everyone's now concerned with, oh, this is the best mic and that's the best,
Yeah.
The reality is, we were just talking about this last night, like when you're mixing a song and you pull up your EQ, right? The advice is, don't use a visual EQ. Use just a channel strip, because you listen with your eyes when you don't think about it. And that's the whole point. And I feel like that's we've profiled so many Vox-like circuits, and then you plug in an actual AC30, and you're like, oh, all these other amps that are Voxy amps sound more like each other than an actual AC30 does. You know what I mean?
It has its own thing. Yeah.
And so I feel like everyone, you have the confirmation bias is exactly the right thing.
Yeah.
It's, I want it to, I want to make sure that I was right in my decision.
Yes.
And
maybe to a lot of people, it's more fun to go on the internet and talk about this stuff than to do it.
Yeah.
So I have a question. One of my favorite things about the unit are some of these parameters that don't exist in the analog world. Would we ever get any more? Or do you ever think of a new parameter? Or maybe there's a hidden parameter that is not, something in there that we don't have access to. Because I end up using, it's funny, even as I've played the Kemper a long time, and only in the last few years have my ear has grown accustomed to that clarity control going higher and higher and higher. And I sort of enjoy it more and more. And even now, often I leave off the amp compressor when I used to always like to add more. Maybe my preference is with an AC30 style thing. I like more amp compression. Maybe that's that. But I find myself changing these things over time. Any plan? Will we ever see more of some of those?
I don't think so, actually. These set of parameters, such as you said, clarity, was that 2 bars and all that
Yes,
stuff. Right?
yeah.
No, they. I made them while while developing profiling, and even before I did some of these parameters, and I think I have them all.
Yes.
Now this is
right.
I was like trying like, well, how can I bend a tube? What can I do with distortion and stuff? And this is actually, let's say there's all the ideas that I had. They're in there, and I have, maybe I tried some more, but they didn't have an impact on the sound in a way, or it was not good enough. I mean, there is, that you say there's something that I have to try again because I have to make it better.
What if you add one that does nothing? But then we'll all think it does.
Oh,
We'll believe that it does something.
Well, I think there is.
User switch.
Yes.
Leland's Clara is talking about.
Yes. I have to look something up because there is one that, well, pretty much does nothing. Well, when you set it at a certain position, which is the amp compressor, and I see Michael Britt using it on every single profile, but only putting it to 0.3. Where I strongly believe it does nothing because the value, but he says, yeah, but of course it does, and I still have to, I didn't say no, you're wrong. Then
He's gonna get a real kick out of this.
I wasn't sure. Okay, I wasn't sure, but
Yeah.
I believe it does nothing at that. Of course, it does something when you turn it up. But at that value, I think it should, and it should not do anything. That is my point. It shouldn't do anything, or pretty much nothing at 0.3, and I still have to check it out. What's the point? So we have a little case like that.
Yes.
Suddenly it does nothing. Yeah. I mean, I love this.
I love that. Yeah, right.
Of course, I love that.
It's like the thing I did live sound a lot for a while, and we always had this empty channel, and when always the guy, the girl, the screaming audience member comes, the vocals louder or whatever. So I said, okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Because in this mess you don't hear anything, anyways. And this reminds me a little bit of. I'm just wondering if I might be allowed to be a little bit anecdotal.
Please.
Because I think it was 26-ish when I got this Access virus, the tabletop synthesizer unit, which was used for early experiences or test things with the profiling, and I could do profiling, but I couldn't save. And there was this once, if you remember, the magic parameter.
What was that again?
You forgot?
Yeah, I forgot. What was that?
The magic parameter.
Yeah. So for me, it was like
I forgot.
more nice of everything. So just one knob.
Yes.
It's like this
sweetening, like the sweetening effect.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I don't know what
but
it
did
was.
we have it?
Like
or
an
was it
enhanced
just
knob.
No. You did have it, and you changed it, and you put it with every version onto another knob, and the camera's off.
Just keep going.
Should we
It's
stop?
too
Okay.
hot. The
And,
camera got hot.
Exactly. We got that one.
And it had something to do because of our conversations with making it tighter, nicer, and I find this idea with this, this saturation things, the soft knobs or so.
Yes.
So if you have a recorded guitar and you send it to a saturation plugin, it makes it a little more.
Yeah.
So, but that was then, of course, spread out to various parameters which are now in the profiler.
Yeah, but you know what? It might be one of these because I never mixed them up in a way or like put them all on that same knob. It might be one of these parameters that we know.
Maybe, yeah.
Right? Like something like tube shape or definition. I'm not sure. And it must be one of these parameters,
Yeah,
and
all
it
these
will be
came-
still there because I have never thrown things away that were good,
Well, I'll give
and
you-
that Tom loved.
You know
Never
what?
throw it away.
You know what parameter? you know what parameter I'd like? Michael Britt and I agree that if you just bump all of it, bass, treble, middle, presence, all up just a little bit, it just sounds better. So maybe one knob that just of
course
is
it
called
does.
magic knob. Right.
Yeah, of course it is.
Maybe one knob that secretly is bumping it all up a
Yeah.
little bit more. Maybe call it magic, call
It's
it
a-
better, the
yeah.
better knob, you know.
It's
And
that knob
we don't
that
even-
would add volume,
Yes, yes.
0.8 dB.
Yeah.
This is enough. This is enough to make it sound better,
Yes.
but not to
yes, just a
realize
little, one
that
or
it's
two
just
lights.
volume.
We always say one
Yeah.
or two lights, just one or two lights of
Yeah,
everything sounds
we might
better.
do an update for that.
Okay,
yeah.
final question.
But I have yeah.
Go ahead.
I have this story with this is also about a guitar amp and tube myth,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the deep parameters that maybe you don't hear so much. It's that tube shape because you can really change and morph with that.
Yeah.
Change and morph the shape very radically.
Yes.
And it's actually maybe I've never told that if you turn it all the way up, it is digital clipping. There is the tube has gone, but most of the time when you play, you don't hear it, right? This is something that's close to not hearing it, like this thing, and it's taken the tube, pretty much the tube out of the equation, and you continue playing guitar and have a good sound in a way. So it's not about this. So the myth that the tube is so nice because it distorts softly is only half a story. So that one got
We're
hot,
good,
right?
we're good. We got the main one.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, we're losing the systems.
losing. Okay.
We're losing the systems.
Okay,
here.
final question. Final question that you're good. The main one's on. We'll just cut to that track. It's okay. All right, final question that everybody wants. Final question that everybody is really wondering. Okay. We have the head, the lunch box, the toaster.
Mm-hmm.
We have the rack, the stage. We have the player. You see where we're going? When are we going to get Kemper Pocket?
That's a good idea. We should, we should work on it. But how small does it need to be?
Just maybe
For the
smaller than an
for the
iPhone.
belt?
Like an iPhone.
for the belt.
Yeah. To clip it right onto your belt.
Yeah, you want to have a guitar amp on
Yeah.
your belt. There
Like
have
at
been,
this size.
They have been, I think, of Zoom. Isn't that true? Like
I think so.
back in the early '90s, there
Very
was like a
small.
belt guitar amp.
Yes.
Like a solid state
Yeah.
amp, right?
Yeah. And you can wear it on the
Yeah. I didn't see that people really loved that one.
So soon.
But
But
still
I've
was
seen
a great idea.
I've seen people use it in the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Little things, yeah.
And do you remember this violin guy from
Yes.
from that orchestra?
Uh-huh.
He was using the Zoom, and then he dropped by and tried the violin with the profiler, where we got this sound police ticket in 10 seconds. When he was playing Van Halen on his
Yes.
strings, and he's using on stage and in the studio this little Zoom still.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
They, of course, they can sound good, like Suns amp, for example. It's all analog, but it's solid state.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so
It's
next year Kemper
absolute-
Pocket confirmed. Kemper.
let's see. Yeah.
Which comes first,
How
Kemper?
small?
Which is more likely, Kemper 2 or Kemper Pocket?
Kemper Pocket, actually. Yeah. Kemper 2 is not.
That's it. We have
So because Kemper Pocket.
Kemper Pocket.
Kemper 2 Pocket. We start with that one, right? Yeah.
All right. That's perfect.
Yeah, and that's just an arrow sign.
Yes.
Says Kemper to pocket.
Perfect. This has been episode 21 of Guitar Friends. Thanks for doing this. Thank you for coming by, and thank you for making another great Kemper, and spreading some knowledge. I've been HW.
I've been the Seuss.
I'm John too.
Christoph Kemper.
And I'm Tom Wendt. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.